Okay, I am Moonflower Princess. I'm also streaming on my Discord. Just wanted to make a quick session with just an example for practicing. I see who is A and Greg. Hello, guys. So yeah, I had this idea. It's something I always love to paint, and today on my way to work on the bus or countryside, like you see now it's really nice light and the fields, they cut the fields. So the straw, there's a lot of straw fields. They have some straw bales on the fields. So I'm always inspired to paint something. It's kind of easy, an easy sujet, an easy something like an easy composition, and just also wanted to show a simple way how to approach, like make a simple composition and use of colors. With Moonflower Princess, is it Tilly? No, it's not. Moonflower Princess. I remember the name is familiar from other streams. Ah, it's Tilly. Ah, yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah, so why you're on Twitch? Doesn't matter. So yes, also I was preparing before, and when I wanted to start, the computer didn't react anymore, didn't start. So I had to reset. Okay. What? Not Tilly? Oh no, not Tilly. Easy way I could put it here. So yeah, if you hear noise, my wife, she also, the moment I wanted to start, she came home. So now maybe a bit noisy. So yeah, the thing I wanted to show is it's also usually I don't use these much. There's a quick settings docker in Krita where you have brush size, kind of you can select quickly. So all steps from low opacity, 200%, the flow. It's also kind of a nice tool. Hello, Brilliant Killer. What's up with these names? And also, yeah, on my way to work, they have some nice fields, and I wanted to. I've seen the last couple days. And today on the way back, I wanted to take some photographs out of the bus, and now they're gone. They took them away. These straw bales, Strohballe, kind of look nice when they're sitting there in the fields. So yeah, kind of the approach I'm showing is kind of keeping everything really simple. It doesn't mean it's not can't get complicated or difficult, but it's just a simple approach. And also trying just using one layer. Yeah, what's Brilin Killer? What's the name? Because on Discord you have like Berlin. Always associate Berlin. Yeah, it's just difficult to speak, to pronounce. And yeah, so I have made some photographs of kind of a scene, what I have in mind, but it's not about like using. You don't really need references, but I have some pictures I can upload afterwards. I just loaded them on my Dropbox. And just for kind of reference or inspiration, but I'm kind of trying to talk to what I'm doing. Also, the trying to keep the composition fairly simple, and it could also work portrait mode as well. So the idea is kind of take a simple sujet, not too complicated. We're not going into details. And so you can make many in 1 hour, or maybe one in an hour or half an hour. And the thing is, like, you can do this all the time, many times, try different colors, play around. Try vertical painting and just practicing kind of mixing color and also the composition, play around with. Even though it's simple, you can kind of play around with. So I took the landscape mode, just 4K to 2.5K. Could also make like rather low resolution around 1024 or 6040. So there's less pixels. Doesn't really matter. Might go with this because it's a bit easier with performance, because I'm streaming on 2 sites and recording. Also, I usually have a transparent image background, and the background color in Krita you can change. It's almost like the paper color. So it's not transparent. If you want to have it transparent, it's like, I think this is the default in Krita. But anyway, it's not too much about Krita. I think you can do this with any software, because I'm using in Krita, it's the basic one, so it's the most basic brush there is. It's just a good old powerful round brush. No size, no opacity on pressure or something. So, and what I'm gonna do is just use 50% and maybe a little less even at some point, 20%, but maybe 50, just restrict restrict myself to using the 50%. Starting with a white canvas, so I'm trying to find a color. It's all about color finding for the sky. So I'm switching to the size so you can also easily see. I guess numbers doesn't matter. It's just have a really broad white brush. So and just one stroke is 50% opacity. And also change the color selector. It's easier to see which color, which hue I'm kind of picking. So sky is usually in this range, greenish, more ultramarine. So by kind of layering these colors and just using the 50% in the same size, uh, just to have some color on the canvas. Usually I don't go too high on the saturation. But if it's 50%, you can kind of sometimes picking a little more saturation can make a difference. So I'm really going like covering, almost trying like a create a gradient, although it's almost impossible. So kind of have to think what colors, what strokes you make. So that's maybe where it gets a bit harder. Otherwise, it's just really keeping it simple. And composition I'm going is like really horizontal orientated, like horizontal stripes, but inside there there's kind of this vertical. You see now. So playing just with the maybe with the first with the sky a bit, going kind of way slower for maybe around this size. Usually I use the Krita, I have shift drag, so I can continuously change the brush size. So maybe just around this size, trying to block in some color, some clouds with a really bright, more desaturated blue than the sky. So it's almost like white, but not quite. So it gives a really soft, like layering and with the color. So I can also pick one because maybe I want this color, maybe more of this, and it's like can really make subtle transitions, or not transitions, but color shades of this same blue. Can also pick these colors. So it's a lot about picking a color, but then layering over the others, and then again picking from the canvas. In many software, it's different. Krita is just control, holding control. Maybe we can go a bit smaller with the brush. So I'm making this really kind of horizontal orientated. No complicated things, no perspective now for now. But usually in the sky, the clouds, they go kind of with the distance, they get smaller. Maybe have another stripe somewhere. This is already like trying to build a composition, but not too worried yet about anything. So the other color for the cloud is like I select some just a bit darker gray. It's still in the blue range or blue hue. You can play around with a bit different kind of blues, but if you go more towards the ultramarine-ish blue, you see like already the color select it tends to look more gray. And also depends what saturation you have. So it kind of goes more blue again, or is more gray. So it's all, I think any of these colors here can kind of work. Doesn't really matter. Just can't go too dark, or yeah, still have some contrast to these more brighter spots in the cloud. Also, since this is like looking from almost from below, can make really pointy kind of building a texture. Doesn't matter. Maybe go even a bit smaller. Just put this gray beside this more whiter blue. Maybe have some, and it's really easy to make kind of clouds with the round brush. So now I'm not really trying to paint clouds and just putting the colors I know or I see, or maybe a reference. And now by picking again this kind of blue I had here before, I can erase again or make shape more precise a little bit. So it's not all just round. Selecting this blue again. And sometimes you make an error or something, or you go too far, but it's not about. Sometimes nice things happen also when you do this. Some kind of variation in the grays, trying out how dark can you go or how bright. Always in contrast to this blue I already have. I always have a thumbnail open. It's also good to see. And it doesn't matter where these clouds are. You don't have to follow if you want to follow along. You don't have to really just make up something. Maybe use a reference where you have some kind of type of clouds. So here I have again this grayish I have in the white. I can pick up. Maybe there's a brighter shade. Have a little bit darker. Just seeing the colors you have on the canvas and choose the ones you think you like. something like this. Maybe it could be even a little more blue. So I kind of pick this color, I see where it is, go a little more blue and maybe just put some blue in it, pick up again the color. So for now I want to also establish the ground for now. So what I have in mind is kind of a mid-tone green, not too saturated. And green has a wide range, usually. Can be difficult to know what green you see on a picture or in nature if you outside. I always do this all the time, every day. When I look at nature and I kind of try to guess some really hard to tell colors. Most of the time you see in houses or grays. It's always kind of make and kind of analyze and compare with other colors around you. So you can say like it's more bluish gray or a reddish gray. And with green, our eyes are really sensitive. So, but any color, almost to go turquoise, blue, can still be green. Even kind of really a gray color can be green. Though always relative to the colors around it. So for now, I want to try maybe also add a bit more first in the sky. You have this blue. Usually you see, depending on the sky, daytime and light, where the sun is. But often you see as a more darker blue above at the top of the sky, and the more you go towards the horizon, it kind of lightens up and goes somewhere almost. I think it's yellow, a more green or turquoise, bluish. But the trick is kind of with this 50%, you can go trying really a bright yellow, really where it's yellow, red, a little more reddish, greenish. Maybe you have to go for opacity, maybe even lower, 20%. Usually I do this before I add the clouds here, but I just want to. So it's kind of a challenge also to how do you lay down these strokes so you get something out of it. So, but now I have this mixed, I can pick up this color, and since I'm using 20%, maybe using again 50, so it's a bit stronger. Pick up this color and fill the other areas again. And you even can do this with a mouse. With a mouse, it's just more of a challenge, I guess. I did this today at work a bit, play around, as I had no work. So I'm just trying to like either 50%, 20% for finer adjustments. Maybe even go again over these clouds. really have no fear of doing something wrong. To me, it looks maybe easy. I have a lot of experience, kind of have a plan in my mind, but I'm just trying to show a really simple way to picking up these colors, play around with them, picking up the yellow or the white. And also these clouds, I can add a bit of yellow. I can pick up this color and I add a bit of yellow, but the color isn't yellow. It just got more desaturated. That's kind of weird, no? But it looks more yellowish. So that it's really the subtle changes that sometimes you think you see this is more yellow, but it isn't. It's like also in the sky. This is still kind of a green, blue, depends. If I go more, add a more really an orange, you kind of feel take really. If I go really bright, usually it can go really saturated. Uh, more darker colors, it's kind of more like in the mid. Most colors in nature end somewhere in the mid or lower saturation in the darker colors. And in the mid tones is where you have kind of the more vivid colors and also really bright ones. You kind of mix yellow with white, kind of type of color. And also with distance, the clouds, they get less, they have less contrast in the distance. So I'm mixing this again 50%. I get a little more brighter gray. I can pick this up again, makes it easy. So there's a lot of like atmospheric perspective coming through this technique. Like the farther away, the less color it has, or more less intense. So it kind of sometimes there's no real there's rules. So you can kind of study them or make take photographs and kind of pick the colors and see what they really are. Sometimes really can help understanding that it's often not what you think or what you see, really, or think you see. So for now, yeah, let's say we go to the green. So I want to have, and also I'm not doing a sketch. Maybe would be easier for you to see where I'm going, what I have in mind, but it will get clear in a minute. Also, usually I don't do really, if you've seen me painting on stream, I usually don't do sketches. I just paint. Or for me, this is kind of the sketch. So it's more like blocking out using some simple rules and techniques. Werner Herzog said storyboards are for cowards. And I'm kind of like, in my thinking, it's like, I'm not thinking like sketches are for cowards, but for me, it's like the way I think. I don't really need it. I want to live with a painting. I don't want to restrict myself too early by putting down lines, but sometimes just a quick doodle sketch and to put where things maybe want to go, but you can do this on the fly anyway. It's maybe for really serious work where you really have to plan out. But even then, sometimes not doing really narrow yourself down to something can be the unexpected can happen. So even though I'm using really a hard round brush, by picking up the color and mixing it just with 20 or 50%, I can make, you can, over time, you see now it's more, it's getting more and more a gradient. Even though it's not perfect, I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm not trying to draw really clouds or trees. Just putting down simple blobs and at the end look like mixing back and forth with the color. So yeah, a new layer. Depend. Usually I use for background, middle ground, foreground, and depends really. Sometimes I go almost overboard with layers, but then I kind of wish, or sometimes if I can, I reduce as much as possible. And usually it ends up with like key parts. Maybe you have figures or you have a building. I kind of try to keep that on a separate layer. But usually, yeah, just going with 2, 3 layers of maybe for a landscape. I would add now another layer and paint the ground, foreground, or middle ground. But for now, I just do this on one layer. Just also to make it a little more challenge. So maybe I can try and kind of commit to what I do and not to worry too much. A tractor Tarzan. I don't like sketching, but so far I've only seen you and other artists not using sketches, so it gives me hope. Yeah, whatever, man. There's no rules. There's really no rules. You make the rules. That's the I think one of the biggest problem of our time. Like so many young, they're so focused on what others do and how they do it. Like want to sketch, go for it. You don't want to sketch, you don't like I even do professional work. I don't really care about sketch. Me, I like drawing and kind of almost like yeah, sketching, but then I don't really like to go farther and paint it. It's something but I also have done many work like where I really try to sketch exactly and then it's more like feeling it out. But I always then feel like I could have gone experimented more maybe or now as I have like 3, 4, 5 sketches and I don't know which is better or then it's kind of I really have a difficult time choosing and deciding. So that's also maybe a part. I have a 24-inch screen tablet. So yeah, this also is anyway. I also try to keep it small, and zoomed out, not going It's not really about going into the details. But starting like this can be really refreshing, and you feel free to mess up. Doesn't really matter. It's not like I spent hours and hours painting all these little clouds and stuff, and then it's kind of mess up, or have to worry I mess up. So just trying to build these shapes and layering, overlapping shapes. Also explain this in other streams. Now I keep using my like shift drag to resize. Okay, so for now I think going head over to the green. So if I kind of think of layering, I should maybe start from the back. So trees far away, they would be almost like a green bluish color. Maybe desaturated, maybe a little more bluish. Just around the bottom, yeah. So they kind of almost reach like the middle of the painting. I don't have decided at the ground somewhere. And also, if you add a little more saturated blue, a little darker, just making silly strokes. And have one that's maybe already, let's really go for, yeah, still kind of in the middle of saturation. But have a dark green. So this would be trees. That's closer. And I can see like starts to look like a boring green. If I go like going more towards yellow, kind of just mix it a bit, not completely. Maybe go a little more towards the blue and a bit darker. So now I have to think like where, maybe let's start with two shapes. Like we have this, we can call this a forest, trees. I don't want them to meet them in the middle, maybe more a little to the left, so overlapping. And also for the ground now, has to be some sort of green. Usually grass is really kind of in the middle of these, but it can vary depending on lightning and everything. So really just going for the middle point. And for now, just anything like in this range, more warmer green, a more colder green. It's all about like playing around with these, and you don't know yet what green you need, what do you want. So now that's what I mean by this horizontal type of composition. So it's kind of just horizontal focused, really simple static composition. Go a bit darker, a bit cooler, mixing in, and go a little more cooler, more blue. So that the ground of these trees, these trees start higher than these ones in the front. And I can already see and tell like, okay, yeah, this looks fine for me. Maybe I need to play around with where these lines are really. Like it's really hard. Sometimes maybe also why not add like a tree. That's kind of more in the front, overlapping this shape. So yeah, the light is already kind of with these clouds. It's somewhere at top left, shining like somewhere this angle. So also the trees, then this tree would cast some shadow. So it's only really, it's not really important exactly, but just putting this horizontal line to this shape makes it like it's grounded. Now I'm kind of already have the different shades of this green I can pick up again. Use this. This is really kind of a bluish green here in the back. Make it a little, bring it a little back. Just add a little more brighter green again to it to add some more contrast. Also, these trees here maybe still kind of too blue, but since I have this brighter blue here in the back mixed, I can pick this up, these like farther away trees. Really adds to the atmospheric perspective. But this from this bluish, I want to go back to a more, back to the green. Maybe in this range, go a bit darker. It's kind of the same value, but and now mixing it with this green, I still see the blue shining through. That's kind of really intentional, or it's a with this technique of layering the color and just trying to keep this as much as possible, or in a good fashion, like even though maybe later I decide to really overpaint it opaque with a color, but this makes it really like colors, these colors interesting, and it's not just the simple one green. And for the shape, like asking myself like the size of these compared to these I have in more in the front. I want to make this a little higher. Add some more blobs here. Also making these round blobs that kind of helps creating a texture for trees. Kind of nice. I want a little more complexity here with these trees in the back, make them also picking this color from the sky and overpaint this 50% still. Maybe I'm already going too far with trying to show it, because I'm kind of used to this way of painting and shaping things. But yeah, that's kind of where it all comes down to, making these shapes compared to each other, the colors, and always the side, the exits, I would call them. These are really important. We're like we're not stopping here. It's like we're going over the border. So the painting, the landscape would continue. It doesn't stop here. Although it would be possible to just have more center orientated and really loose on the outside. But if you go really, yeah, we're striving for unity and harmony, a good balance in the composition. So even with this simple composition, it can be like you can play around with these shapes and add a little more darker colors, green. And I usually keep this dark. I don't go yet in with highlights. So yeah, I'm not reading chat, sorry. I'm kind of talking, painting. I don't want to make it quick as possible. Yeah, thank you, Adrisaurus. So my intention here is to go for a flower field, a field, straw. How do you say? You say Weizenfeld. I don't even know in English. Because now it's the time where I live, where the fields are cut and they're dry. They have this nice yellow, orange, almost. And here again, I go like a little more to the red. I kind of know it's a yellow or it's a beige. But there's so many colors. But just by adding these to these other colors I already have, and also the shape here is really nothing complicated. But what you can try is to add more depth when going, like making these kind of stripes from one, this sort of manner. Really quickly adds a lot of depth, more depth, and perspective. This is really a side view, and the thing is really to find that what bright, how bright is this yellow? How bright can I go, or how dark do I need to go? Adding a little more intense yellow, adding some stripes just to add some variation. Can I, how desaturated, when I go more desaturated? Because if you look, it's never like just one color. It's always kind of a mix of colors. There's little shadows, there's little highlights. Just by looking also at the thumbnail, I can tell. Continuing with this green I have here, going a little more yellowish on this green, and more brighter. Maybe just in one part, you know, not the whole. Just in some in some parts there's light shining on it. In other parts there's shadows. So there's already plenty of things you have to consider and like find a nice balance of these shapes. Make these shapes, put them together in a way. And now we have these stray balls that are kind of inspiring. They're kind of the same color, and I can just add with the round brush. I can easily. It's just a small. It's a tube, a short tube, really thick. It's kind of the same in the same color, same hue like the field that's cut. But the same in here, like I can go more, add a little more red, go more orange, add a little green, and see what contrast it gives. And now maybe put others down here. In an interesting way. Usually they put them together. So and now you can also practice like adding perspective to these. That they're almost like marshmallows, yeah. So this can be a good practice and chance to like and practice for perspective, but also having these blobs to make them really sit in the field so that there would be some kind of shadow. And the shadow is usually, it's not always just a darker version of this hue, of this color. Sometimes there's light reflecting from the sky. So often the color then gets kind of desaturated and it's almost kind of getting, can mix in some blues into the shadow. 50%, just adding a bit of this bluish gray. Gives also a nice contrast to this orange. And then this straw ball is really what is made out of straw. And it's a big mushroom, so it's really simple. Shape-wise, but still enough to like have a challenge to like practice and adding. Maybe I can't paint this highlight exactly. I'm already going too detailed. I can pick up this color again and shape this, make this more narrow or whatever. Just squinting the eyes, blurring the eyes really helps seeing like, okay, that's a good contrast, that's a good color. So usually in bright sunlight, the light side of these can get really bright, almost like not white, but quite high yellow, quite desaturated. While on this side, maybe there's more shadow side. You can really play around with getting more, adding bounce light, adding a bit more light in the shadow, some structure, some texture. A little more intense orange. Because I intentionally keep this base color kind of low and desaturated. And for this side would be kind of the shadow side. I can go with a, you can also pick up this blue, maybe just layer and see, pick up this one and layer it. So yeah, there's like, I can pick this sky blue and put 50% over this color, just a dot, and pick this color and do the same again. So it's kind of 25% or mixed. So this would be kind of the reflection of the sky. Picking again this color to mix over it, make a transition. It's really just having like 3 or 4 colors that's needed for this. Maybe there's really a low contrast between the dark or the shadow side and this lit by the sky. And maybe it doesn't work out first, but if you really try, maybe also look at references and get inspiration from it, like trying to analyze what these colors really are or what they do against each other or how they play. And then go from here and adding, like going further, maybe adding some, going more, even more orange, red or brown. Just find like where do I need to, where does it need more Sometimes just adding a little speckles, a little shadow, the right shape can make a lot of difference. Maybe also trying adding some back here and picking the same color would be somewhere. Just the challenge is like finding nice positions for them, spread them out, but not evenly. Have fun with them. Also with these trees in the back. And the farther you go, like it gets harder to like change things. The more details you add, so don't be afraid also to go again and maybe really broadly change something. Also picking up this shadow color. This can be really fun, like just adding some other texture. Colors I already have here on the canvas. Just add some variations. And still also maybe not happy with this green color. And then if I have this here, I maybe have to paint around it, but it's still possible. It's not really an issue. And also no fear of like playing around with these shapes and finding other compositions, but in the same manner, you know, like keeping the basic idea and composition, but maybe add some more larger trees or something else. But this is really just kind of the sky having this transition to the horizon, adding some white blobs. You don't really have to paint already some detailed clouds, but just some white, not really white, but somewhere in this range. Can be yellowish ochre or bluish, really a gray. Just see what you get with this contrast between these subtle colors and adding some variation of blues. And then also reacting to like, okay, maybe this would it now be this part here. I can make them a bit smaller, maybe a bit push them more to the back. So every shape or this mid or big shape they kind of add some intensity and white to an area. So it's more focused on still on kind of the silhouettes of these. I'm still not worried about highlights and details of these trees. But anyway, it's just to demonstrate. It's really hard for me to kind of focus and paint and talk. So I'm kind of maybe messing up a bit, but or not go where I would maybe otherwise. So, and then after like trying to find, since I kept this kind of mid green or dark green for the trees, I have good contrast. This would be like the dark parts of the trees. So now after that, like going for highlights, always facing kind of facing the light, but adding these little shapes here to separate or add some light to them. And not with a much brighter and much intenser color green, just really a subtle. Often we go overboard with like think it has to be really bright, but depending really on the scene and light and it's really only restricted to what you already have, what colors you have, and do they function well, do they work well together. And it's really about feeling out how far you can go or what's needed really. So really trying to find these greens, these colors, so they work well together in a harmony. That's kind of the challenge, but also I think the essence to find unity in the painting, in the colors, which is really hard. It's not something you can just do without studying, without practice. And here also can kind of go the shadow side. Maybe there's a backlight from the sky, so it's usually a bluish green, a little bit brighter than what I have. It's kind of often leaves of trees are really reflective. So if you go further with like maybe adding details, sometimes really highlights in leaves against such a bright sky, they can be like this bright, just little reflections. It's not the overall color, it's just like little blinks, little speckles. Can really add to the. Usually I don't really even go that far. Or if you have, you want, you can try add some kind of flower here. If it's really a shiny leaf, you have some kind of highlight. And of course, you can also, in some cases, like you have different kind of trees, they have different colors of different greens, which always adds to the diversity, but it also makes it really, make it really difficult. Especially like working now from imagination. Uh, I would say that many trees are more in the mid green, but many also some trees go more towards like a warmer green. But also a lot of trees have like a bluish, more bluish, grayish green. This also easily lets you kind of could make it more like adding a part where you see a little further back, just to also practice and play around with uh, you know, if you have really a lot of atmospheric perspective. Like today, there was a good atmospheric perspective, so the trees really got really blue pretty fast. If you have really clear weather, the green gets really subtle, gets really uh, towards the bluish. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And that's just a simple demonstration. From here, also you can do this multiple times. Maybe you suddenly you try other colors, maybe another daylight, whatever. But there's many things you already have here that you can practice, which are always something you have to tackle anyway. If you want to paint landscapes and realistic, and then yeah, how far you can go, like adding. Can I add more? What happens if I add some kind of just with 10%, 20%, some green to this shadow? Or the opposite, like adding more brown, make it a little darker. What does that to my painting, to the overall? Make this a little more orange. The top side maybe. So not trying really into going into too much detail, but at some point you can, of course, go further and paint it out. But I'll go 50%. And then also just with a round brush, at the end maybe adding more texture can help sell this a bit better. Maybe adding a pathway, or as I showed earlier, picking up colors and also seeing what color it is. Maybe going a bit more intense, more brighter. I would want to have more contrast, more shine on this. Yeah, and finding these kind of harmonic colors and the right shapes can already, with such a simple sujet composition, can be a challenge, you know? I could paint this for years, so I already do, kind of like in different forms, maybe sometimes, yeah, different sujets, but I always come back and enjoy this, like maybe even just a half an hour in the evening, relaxing. It's maybe not something I want to maybe share even, it's just practice. What happens if I add more? So just to keep it really simple and have like 5, 6 of these main big shapes, putting in this stray balls gives a chance to like work with perspective of these little, and yeah, that there's already so much in it. You don't really also you don't really have to go far with the sky. But still maybe you find like once you have all this in, maybe putting in some more distant clouds here. Since I already established some other shapes again, like makes it easier to know maybe where to put things. And of course, like if you really want to try out something, you can go add a new layer, paint over it. Or just pushing it farther here. Also, how dark is the shadow? How dark? Adding a little more structure in the shadow a little bit can help a bit more. But overall, it's just about this base kind of green color, trying to find, and then the highlight color, which is already a challenge. And maybe often there's some kind of reflection going on in the dark, in the shadow spots of the tree. So often it's really subtle. So I'm kind of trying to model these silhouettes. The farther I go, like I can add more and more details, and maybe I find really what I want or how far I want to go. Sometimes also in this area, I don't really need to add a lot of highlight. Often maybe you just see a little bit of green. And the trick is just not to overdo it. It's really in the same contrast almost, just really barely visible. Yeah, I don't know, composition. Usually they just happen for me, but I'm also, of course, have a lot of experience and I have my own bias in what I like or what I think is maybe good. Because there's so much to consider. I don't, sometimes you overthink. So that the more I try, the more I fuck it up. So I try to, it's kind of a balance between trying and not trying. I'll let things happen. That's kind of a good way. And when I have something, I can react to it, and I feel it's often an intuition and a feeling. And I think what really helped me was studying or just looking at old master paintings. I think this was a key moment, like where it clicked. What, not that I really understood or can do it or could do it, but I know more or less what it's about. So that really helps, I guess. So it's really about this harmony, this unity, not about the little parts. It's not the sum, it's the whole thing that go beyond what's there. Uh, Corners, exits are really important, which often beginners don't really see, don't really understand. Like the edge, what shapes, how do this shape end? Uh, Flipping canvas digitally is kind of easy, an easy way to. If you work traditionally, you can use a mirror just to see maybe some spots that's maybe you could improve the balance. Yeah, composition is not only, it's kind of everything. It's not only like where to put things and how to divide the canvas. It's really anything, like the light on the landscape is composed. Everything is composed. The colors are composed. Like I think to get really good or better is like trying to forget about it and just use your guts and use your intuition and practice a lot. Look at good paintings, old masters. Most of them, there's better ones. They already have it down. They practice their whole life. So kind of finding the essence. And often people say, many artists say, It's about the balance and immunity as a whole. But it's really a large world and universe. So there's, as I said a bit earlier, there's like there's no rules. You make the rules. But of course, if you want to have a lifelike likeness of a landscape, you kind of play with these rules, but you can go really far and go extreme with colors. That's, yeah. But even in this just simple, I have a few greens, I have this yellow, orange, and this blue of the sky. And that's really a simple setup for now. And yeah, often we tend to go maybe too bright or too intense with color. Maybe the green is really difficult. Also, there's a lot of also difficult the blues in the sky. If you have clouds, but just narrowing it down to maybe three, two, three colors for first, and then go from there, adding more variation. So often what it makes it really interesting is like having different hues in a spot, like this blue, there's more orangey, gray, which sometimes work better, sometimes worse, but that it's really up to like experimenting experience. And I really like to work this way, really keep it simple, stupid. And even if you go just this route, like adding some blue, adding a more greenish blue, dark, and if you layer this, you already get some kind of atmospheric perspective. Add some more. You know, Roscoe, he has these large, just like horizontal stripes of colors. That's like you're searching for the light, for the colors. That's all that there is, you know. You can't really, one of those artisan paintings you can't really look at digitally or in a book. You really have to see them live because this color they have a certain intensity and stuff that like you only see when you're really there. Similar to this, like you can just play around with these colors and maybe add something that looks like trees, like these overlapping shapes. As I like mentioned also before, Why not like try making a more difficult one with perspective added to this field? Like, how would I go with the round brush? Maybe adding some help, some lines. Really fast, I go adding different kinds of green, and I'm often not even sure where, especially when I work from imagination and experience only. Then it's like, but then the fun part is like letting it evolve, letting like putting in the simple shapes and see. It's really seeing, and then reflecting on what you do and what you get with these colors. Do I need more, maybe more contrast on the color? And yeah, with this technique, you can really experiment and play and let things happen, and suddenly you get something unexpected. Maybe even just like putting a whole layer of color over it, transparent. If you feel like it, it's really no fear. And yeah, I guess the harder that's where like I think comes also the saying like the harder you try, the harder you fail, or the more likely you're gonna fail. It's with many crafts this way. I also as a musician, like if you play an instrument, if you really one with your instrument, you don't think about playing, it just plays. You play the drum. As soon as you start thinking what you're doing, you're gonna lose it. You're gonna lose the beat. And with painting, you have to see it like in a similar way, or it's almost like the same. Even though it's a completely different medium, it's kind of yeah. You have to realize enough control to get what you're looking for, maybe, but still keep things loose and open. So how I add a straw? Also by adding some kind of straw ball in a different perspective can be a challenge on its own. I still have 20%. Okay. And where to put this, that comes down to again composition, rhythm. it's just a playground to play around with opportunities and shapes. And not worry about details. That's the key. At least until you like set everything to where it should go, or you think it should go. And not be afraid like of changing stuff. And then like using just a hard round brush, it can be good practice and a challenge to technically use it to add to make shapes, for example. By overpainting, modeling the shape. Like I can't really paint this spiky shape, so I first paint it like this and then go back and use this other color to form it. Maybe this side is has a little bluish gray in it. Maybe it's and I'm kind of making this up, but of course I have a lot of practice and experience. I'm an observer every day in my life. I look around and see shapes or analyze shapes and colors. So later it's kind of fun playing around with these ideas, with these concepts I've seen or recognized. And it doesn't always work out, but sometimes then I still can go look at some photographs and maybe take photographs, use them. But creating an interesting composition, unity in a painting is still a discipline or a skill or an intuition on its own. Like you don't really get that by observing nature. So often I say composition is a completely unique, its own discipline, own skill. That it should come naturally by painting a lot and just thinking about it and seeing it in other artists' work. It's in like, yeah, there's some really great painters, but they really didn't understand yet. So it's really a different skill. I'm just making this like to show in the same manner, the same sujet, whatever, just a kind of different composition that arise, like a little bit different colors. And already from the previous I did before, I think it's best if you do like 2, 3 in the really short time. So you already start learning and maybe adapting. And it's a quite some times I haven't really painted with just plain hard round brush. And these colors also, they don't have to be realistic, photorealistic, whatever. But in themselves, you know, you just have to worry. If I, for example, put a really intense green here, what does that do? You know, is it almost like alienates because it's too intense, too neon green. But once you start like with putting in this blue, these greens, it's kind of, the farther you come, the more you kind of restricted, or it's almost given. Like if you use it too bright or too intense, the color, it doesn't really work, falls apart. Even just this cloud, this can be just one really large, bright gray blob. It's not even white, it's some kind of green. Yeah, whatever, like adding some variation to these bluish greens. Highlights, I feel like I would like to have some. And also these straw balls, like you can then really, even if maybe your background isn't really, and you don't really want to change it again or too much, then just practicing maybe these stray balls here, adding a little more texture to them or finding the right colors, the right light reflection. It's almost like a still life now. Maybe this field here is maybe still lacking. Wanted to a bit more intense in the orange, yellow. But I can paint around these things easily. And I still have these lines I drawn first because I'm painting 50%. And most of the time it's about putting in silhouettes of colors, simple shapes, and then add some variation to them, some highlights, some shadows that's needed. There may be some parts that are really a bright green and others are, so adding gradients, transitions can really help. And then yeah, is there some kind of rim lights visible here which adds to the, I don't know, that there's so much to try and learn here and experiment. And you also find, I think, a lot of photographs with this type of scenery, with these stray balls. And they always are kind of maybe different, maybe not always the same quality. It can be a simple practice for circle for ovals. What do you say in English? So these circles in perspective. But yeah, that's still enough. It's plenty enough challenge, even just a simple, just some simple shapes and color. I guess I love this type of paintings because it's not too overwhelming. They're quickly, you can paint them quick and just enjoy having fun. I guess it's mostly just finding the essence and just what's necessary. Just reducing, simplifying, abstracting things. And even maybe at the end adding some highlights, pushing a little bit further with highlights. Changes completely, no? Maybe it doesn't work as well as I thought. I can still go especially clouds should be maybe softer. Yeah, and this way with mixing, picking up colors, if you get the hang of it, it's like you can make subtle transitions. Practicing this atmospheric perspective as well. So how do I put this shadow on the tree? Or the highlights to give this some volume, some shape. It's much like painting the clouds, no? It isn't much difference. So, yeah, it's already 2 hours. Initially I thought maybe an hour. And it's also a sujet I think Monet painted a lot. Or was it Monet? I don't know. Don't remember. Monet. And other artists that painted this type of scene like in different lights. I think it's simple enough and you have plenty of opportunities to to play around with the colors and intensity and maybe shapes, perspective. There's all sort of stuff you can texture, the light. And I think it's kind of fairly simple to your first tries, or maybe it won't be as good as mine at first, but just having fun and practice. It's almost like painting with watercolors. So I think what really makes it easy is the transparent round hard brush. Really going wild and with these just painting over it, picking up colors to make it less intense. And also at some point I can't really do much about the sky in the back now without like really going and painting this shape. But maybe still possible, but yeah. That's maybe where then layering can come in handy. But it just adds a lot of more complexity really fast. And, but also flexibility at some point, of course. And by doing this, like you get this sometimes unintentional, like weird shapes and strokes maybe, or overlays that just happen almost by accident, which can really inspire maybe sometimes. But it's really not easy with working with these with colors and light, and it's also something really hard to explain someone who doesn't really know or haven't really played a lot or studied a lot. It's like a lot of things when I was young I heard or picked up. I thought I kind of understood, but it never really, or took me a while to understand. Like, you just have to maybe trust and just keep going and trusting the intuition and not think too hard and be curious and learn, discover things, observe nature, whatever you're doing, the subject you want to. And it's sometimes a hard process and a long process to like get better at something, and but by doing it wrong or maybe not as good as you maybe expect at first, that's just the way it is, the way you learn. Really takes time to understand and takes time to find these contrasts, the right colors, even though there's maybe no right colors. It's just, or compared to maybe you have a landscape, you have maybe a photograph, and you too fixed on like wanting to copy, to reproduce the same, which just to some extent is okay, and you kind of can come really close, but it will never be perfect. But you can come close, or you can realize what it's really about these contrasts, this plays with the colors between different hues and saturations, intensities. So they really start playing together well. That's something that sometimes even the best artists takes really a lot of time to. Every time you make a painting, it doesn't come always easy, even if you seem to know exactly. See, that's kind of the problem. You start, the better you get, you kind of think, oh, no, now. Until like the next painting, or do another something else, try something else, and you start. You almost think like you start from scratch, and sometimes you think you got worse. But that will never go away. It will always be hard. Even the best artists that painted their whole life, even at the end of their life, they thought like they got nowhere. So you kind of have to embrace the struggle. Otherwise, you're just gonna lose yourself. Yeah, the only thing like after you can still play around with the contrast, maybe at burn level. There's a filter, adjust filter in Krita, which like for highlights, midtones, shadows. You can adjust the exposure. That's really a good way to like change the contrast, change intensity overall. And the dodge is kind of making it sometimes brighten up the midtones or highlights a bit. Color balance can be also nice to for dark, mid, and highlights, but you have to be really careful, and can be really change the overall tone. So dark colors, especially for these kind of simple landscape, can work quite well. If you have like really distinct colors, blues, yellows, greens, then play around changing the dark bluish green. Which in this case really shows like there's a lot of intense kind of still intense greens, blues, which kind of still kind of bear. I mean, still are really desaturated, but I just change the overall tone. Can also add an overlay an orange or yellow, play around with that. But suddenly, like overall unity of colors made them more cohesive. I don't know what to say. Like and the same would be like adding a layer overlay, some kind of orange. Uh, yeah, either this or overall, like a filter, but why not like use the same an overlay and then kind of try make some parts more intense again. Yeah, I think the most I learned digitally is like using these tools to some extent, and they can be difficult, and you can lose yourself. Sometimes it can make things worse. Not always happy, but can also add like, for example, like have a purplish blue, and then kind of the opposite of the more orange. Yet just also then try and keep it simple, but see what happens with the colors. And there's really no rules other than like seeing what could be interesting, how does it change, in what way when I add more red or more blue. And it can really add to the diversity of the colors. They can make a huge difference. And it's not always for the better, but because the difficult thing like doing this is your eye adapts really fast, and your brain is anyway, you're looking at long time at the painting, and it's always like changing something in color, then you think, oh, this is a lot better, but it's just different, it's not better. But your brain is so adapted to what you've seen before that the new one is like, oh, this is more interesting. But maybe is, but maybe most of the time it's not. So you have to be really careful with. And it's really up to you what you want, and it's not a. I hate it like when I myself or I see other like, which one do you like better, this red one or this blue one? And it's like it doesn't matter. What do you like best? It's you the artist. Or sometimes does it matter? Or what's the purpose? What's the meaning of the painting? What works better? It's not which you like better or looks better. It's not always that simple. Okay. Where's my other painting? Ah. And also, this is just a simple uh, composition variation, which is more like you can even play around with this, or maybe have a vertical portrait format, but kind of doing the same thing. Uh, I could even like see, okay, this would make maybe a nice portrait format. Cut out something of your painting and use that. Why not? Uh, yeah, I'll go really extreme. So this straw ball is really big, in front. Or, and you just see maybe one tree in the back a little bit far away and or maybe really close to the ground. I don't know. Yeah, so I have to go off again, and I recorded this session. I also will put it on the Discord later. I don't know if I can now, maybe tomorrow. Along with maybe a couple photos that was kind of goes in this direction. Unfortunately, they removed the straw bales today when I wanted to take some photographs, which is unlucky. But maybe I find some other. See, now, sometimes like just playing around with little speckles of add a little more green there or a little more red in this area, but not too much, maybe only in a few parts can make a huge difference. So maybe can add suddenly a lot to the whole. And also from this, you can really go then push it further and add more details. Use this as a base painting or as like you found a nice composition you're happy with, you can then use this as the idea, a sketch, whatever. If you think you really want to go and commit to this, it's also possible. And often, like if you see some really awesome, detailed, photorealistic almost paintings, they started often like this, really simple knockout of shapes and colors. And often it's a long process of finding the right contrasts and colors. It's not always just comes. Even if you like painted for years like this, you still have to be aware. And maybe sometimes it doesn't work and you have to find the right color. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something or got inspired and want to try your own. Go ahead. It's really hot here with this computer around me heating. I have to sit a bit outside to cool down. Yeah, I find myself using kind of adding more blue to the dark area can work. Maybe even some red. That's also a good contrast, going more towards red. Even if in nature you don't really see it, but yeah, sometimes the problem can be with picking colors here, that you just have the pure color. You just have the pure green. And that doesn't really do a lot. It's really hard to find the right shadow color. But yeah, if you kind of mix them, and you maybe also, I find I often like with not adding too much red, or not enough red or blue in some parts, but it can, like, this is almost like gray. You know, adding some red to this dark just pushed it more towards desaturated darker blue. And of course, also working digitally on a monitor and depending on the surrounding light, it can really change a lot the perception of the colors or contrast. But there's no real way around that. You just have to get used to and adjust things maybe more. So often it lacks on my side, yeah, to add more. It's just the nature of picking the colors, putting them on. Sometimes it takes just a few or a lot of tries and error, or sometimes you just nailed it maybe first try. I think it's working well. Other times you have to really bite your nails and when you have it this far, you know, then it's also fun to like experiment, maybe add some other color here and there or change the shapes. If I would really have to have gotten in and like painted all these trees already for hours and hours, it's really hard to change. Not technically, but in your head, you know, not be afraid to. Now that I have painted so much and so long, I don't want to change it. same with like you painted something and are really happy, but at the end you think it's not working, and but you're afraid. You think this part turned out really well, but at the end that's really the problem. So then it gets really difficult sometimes mentally, and yeah, that it's maybe better for the painting or the image if you get rid of it even or change it completely. And the worst part is when you then change it and it's even worse after that. So that, yeah, that's what I mean. It's always a challenge and the journey that never really goes away. I can play around a bit more with like maybe then an overlay and adding some more atmospheric perspective. No, cool. Okay, I have to go. It's already late. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the stream as I did. But enough is enough. Have a great evening or day or night or whatever. Bye bye.